Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking about the Doctor Who episode, The Crimson Horror. And overall, I think this is kind of a meh episode. I mean, it's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. It's just not really it's not an episode that really excites me. And I'm just going to kind of lay out why. And the main reason is, well, they basically Vestra and Jenny and Strax are great characters. I do like them. The only problem is, and I actually do sort of like the idea of an episode focused on them with as the main characters. It's an interesting idea. But this episode shows what happens and the limitations of that idea. And that is simply that Vestra, Jenny, and Strax are not terribly well fleshed out characters. In many ways, they're kind of one-trick ponies. Strax, kind of doesn't really understand what's going on around him and has a tendency to think everything of like being a soldier and being violent and all this other stuff. Jenny is honestly the least fleshed out of everybody, in my opinion. They're only really, but she just sort of like goes from prim and proper Victorian lady to the Black Widow from the Avengers. And Vestra's thing is that she's really smart, and then she likes to occasionally like pull up her veil and have people freak out because she's a creepy, weird lizard lady. So you put all of them together and they make for a very interesting ensemble. They're great guest stars, but there's just not enough crunch for them as characters to really hang an entire episode on. That's just not the case with the Doctor and Clara, who of course are much more fleshed out. I mean, it's a valiant attempt, but it's one that just doesn't quite work. On the upside, I did kind of finally realize this episode who Strax reminds me of. And if you're into anime, you might know a series called Full Metal Panic, which, long story short, has a main character who's this teenager who's basically spent his whole life being a soldier in these crazy third world countries, has no social skills, and then he has to try and pretend to be an ordinary high school kid in Japan. And yeah, great series. I absolutely love it, but Strax and Sosuke very much cut from the same cloth. But anyway, getting back to the actual episode. Just a few things that I noticed. Oh, excuse me. First of all, I like how at the very beginning they bring up the idea of the octagram. This is the part where they're talking about, the last thing that a person saw before they died being recorded in their eyes. And that's a real thing. People back in like the olden times and Victorian times, there were some people who seriously believed that. In fact, I remember seeing a documentary on TV talking about the Lizzie Borden murders. Somebody suggested, using an octagram to try and find out who the killer was. So, a nice touch of the idea of what was going on there. But if you stop and think about what happened in the episode, that doesn't make sense. Now, okay, the Doctor says, okay, if the body chemistry was changed, then maybe the octagram would work. Okay, fine, let's allow that. But still, it doesn't explain why the Doctor was the last thing this guy saw. I mean, the Doctor even said, kind of like, maybe he was pushed into a vat of the stuff. Well, okay, that still doesn't make sense. I mean, the Doctor was chained up and moaning in that room, so how could that possibly have happened? Again, it just makes no sense. But I don't feel like harping on that too awful much. So, one thing I also noticed was, when Strax talks, they're going up to Yorkshire to deal with this. Strax is like something. Well, we're going to the north. Being American, the subtleties of British regional humor are often lost on me, I'm afraid. Now, I get the idea that I understand that the north is kind of considered this sort of very rough sort of place, very blue collar, working class sort of place. The sort of place that that folks from good old London town probably kind of turn their noses up a little bit. Do keep in mind I'm speaking broadly in terms of generalizations. Sorry, I thought my phone was going off, but it's something the neighbor's doing. It's making a weird noise. But anyway, I kind of have come to the conclusion it's sort of like British people talk about the North in the same way that Americans talk about Detroit and the Detroit metro area. Now, exactly how accurate that is kind of up for debate, but I'm just going to put that out there. Okay, so we also have Sweetville, and this is apparently there were really, I mean, these sort of communities like you have Lady whatever the hell her name is, stirring all these people up with the fundamentalism and all this other stuff, and promising this ideal community and all this other blah 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 blah. And there were apparently like real cities like that were set up in the UK over time. They had those, of course, over here in over here, over where I'm from in America. Of course, even into the 20th century, like the most famous one was, of course, probably Jonestown. And if you've never heard of that, well, hit Wikipedia and you'll be in for quite the unfortunate but truly bizarre story. Let me see. So let's kind of just sort of move into the story a little bit. Now, I do like it starts off reasonably strong, and I really did have high hopes for this episode going into things. There's sort of bit where they're like, they're all the three of them are going off to Yorkshire to deal with all this, and they're just like, oh, business as usual for us. But once they get there, this is where things start to kind of unravel a little bit. First of all, you get Jenny placing a pretty heavy amount of trust in somebody she's talked to for literally 2 minutes, and then she goes off and tries to pick a lock literally in front of dozens of people. And it's just like, really, lady? You think all these people who are like 3 feet away can't see you pulling out this enormous pile of lockpicks? I mean, I thought you were supposed to be good at this sort of sneaky ninja stuff. The best you can do is pay off some chick with bad teeth to faint? I mean, couldn't you have at least done that before you pulled out the big old Paco lockpicks? It's just really stupid. That's what that is. Okay, so let's see. Now, one thing that I will give the show episode credit for is when we do finally see the Doctor. He's all red and in those creepy Road to Wellville Victorian pajamas. I mean, it's creepy as hell. You look at that and just go like, whoa, what the hell's going on? What happened to the Doctor? So, that was certainly a nice, lean back in your seat kind of moment. Very nicely done there. And, of course, we get to, that leads us into the flashback. Now, one thing that I absolutely loved about this is that the Doctor kind of is joking around with Clara, and he talks about, yeah, it took me a year to get a gobby Australian to Heathrow Airport. And of course, this is him blatantly talking about Tegan from the 4th and 5th Doctor's era, and he even kind of gives Clara one of the 5th Doctor's catchphrases of brave heart, which is something that the Doctor said only a handful of times to Tegan, actually, but it's really sort of been considered just by some people kind of to be a catchphrase of his, which is really not accurate at all. But still, as somebody who considers Tegan to be one of their all-time favorite companions, for me that was just an enormous treat. I love Tegan; she's great. The only problem with this is, from what I've heard around the internet, is apparently that gobby in Australian slang means something very, very vulgar. Of course, this show being from the UK, gobby is just intended to really mean, won't stop running their mouth. In the land down under, as I said, that means something, well, let's just say sexual and leave it at that. And if the Doctor was using the word in the Australian sense of the word, that would put a very, very new shine on a lot of what was going on in the TARDIS with Tegan and the 5th Doctor. So, yeah. And if you still haven't quite picked up what I'm talking about, go to the wonderful website urbandictionary.com and just throw gobby into their search engine, GOOBY, and yeah. So anyway, we get the little. Eventually, the Doctor and Clara stumble across, old lady McEvil scientist whose name I am embarrassingly blanking on at the moment. Her evil, dastardly plan to brainiac preserve attractive Victorian people. And Doctor ends up on the dead body pile, which, okay. And then, Lady McEvil Scientist is all like, yeah, just throw the dead bodies in the river. Okay, lady, if you're trying to do this stuff in secret, why are you throwing the bodies into the freaking canals? I mean, get an incinerator, bury the damn things. All you're doing is attracting unnecessary attention for no good reason. I mean, seriously, can't you just get some bottles of acid or something and just melt them down? I'm pretty sure that they had sulfuric acid in Victorian times. I mean, really, this is just stupid for absolutely no reason. And I hate when shows do that. When I can spot major, obvious flaws in the bad guy's plan that could easily be solved with a minimum effort, that's just bad and lazy writing. Okay, now, I did enjoy the Doctor's crack about, Attack of the Supermodels. And it was pretty cool to see Jenny go out there and, be her martial arts badass, in no way, shape, or form Black Widow self. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay, actually, no, this is the perfect time to talk about, because I keep referring to Jenny as the Black Widow, because that's the image that's really going to leap to most people's minds. But the thing is, though, this is not in any way really about Black Widow from Avengers. Because look who's playing, Lady McEvil Scientist, and that is, of course, Diane Rigg. And if you don't know who Diane Rigg is, the short version is, ironically enough, back in the 60s there was a TV show called The Avengers from the UK. Nothing to do with the superhero story. And Diane Rigg played the character of Emma Peel. And it was a truly groundbreaking show. It was an espionage sort of 60s spy show. Like, basically James Bond as a TV show in many ways. And her character of Emma Peel really was the first action espionage girl. And if you've ever seen any show or movie that basically has an attractive lady spy action chick running around in a catsuit, well, that all starts with Emma Peel. She is the original, the groundbreaker. And now keep in mind, this is the 60s. Having, a female action hero who was of serious badass caliber, that was groundbreaking stuff in the 60s. I mean, big time groundbreaking stuff in the 60s. And everybody from, Jenny Flint to Natasha Romanoff down on that owes and takes cues from the character of Emma Peel. So, and apparently, people have even said that apparently the fight that Jenny gets into this episode is apparently filmed in such a way that it's an homage to some fight that happened in the Avengers TV show at some point. I don't know. I've never seen this show. Old British TV shows from the 60s are not really my thing unless they are Doctor Who, to be perfectly honest. Although I do like some British TV from the 70s. Are You Being Served, man? Now that's a show. That is a funny, funny show. Anyway, I also did like Mr. Sweet when we finally got to see him. Oh, wait. We'll talk about him in a second. We have to talk about Ada, and that is actually Diane Rigg's real-life daughter. Her name's Rachel Sterling. So we have a real mother-daughter team playing the mother-daughter characters. And actually, I think these characters were done pretty well. We do get to see that Lady McEvil Scientist is a horrible mother. And what I like about this episode is that it's left very ambiguous as to whether or not how much influence on her personality Mr. Sweet, the parasite thing, actually had on her. I mean, how intelligent was this thing? Wasn't it really just trying to survive? Did it really have any real interest in destroying the human race? That doesn't exactly make sense. Because, it's going to severely cut down its potential pool of hosts, which is not really something a smart parasite would do. And if that's the case, then it's all just basically Lady McEvil Scientist wanting to pass judgment on humanity and destroy those that she thought was unworthy, which again really adds to her as a character. And of course we get that great scene at the end where she asks her daughter to forgive her, and the daughter basically says never. Well, actually she literally says never, and then mom is all like, I'm so proud of you. I mean, that just tells you how horrible and twisted their relationship is. And honestly, I thought that was some really nice writing there. And of course, Rachel Sterling does a really nice job with what she's given to work with. Just the real anger when she just beats Mr. Sweet to death with her cane. I mean, that was really nicely done. Although you would think that the doctor might have seen that coming and maybe, excuse me. Sorry, I've been getting over like being sick for like 2 weeks, and my throat is still just a tiny bit messed up. But anyway, the whole idea of Mr. Sweet not even really being evil is sort of reinforced by the idea that the doctor is at the end is like talking about, well, maybe I'll just take you back in time and just let it live there. I mean, if the doctor believed that Mr. Sweet was evil, it seems a little strange that he'd done that. He'd have probably wanted some kind of real punishment rather than, I'll give you a ride home. So, as I said, if that's the case, and that's what I think the episode is hinting at, then, it really is all about just this horrible Victorian lady passing judgment on the world, a world that she found was unworthy. And, that, well, okay, I think my point has been made. So anyway, oh yeah, of course we have to talk about what happens at the very end, where the kids find those pictures from Clara throughout history and said, "Hey, take us in your boyfriend's time machine, or we'll tell our dad that you're a time traveler." Remember what I was saying about lazy and stupid writing? Big time. I mean, Clara has gotten all this information about computers dumped into her head. And I'm going to presume that includes the existence of Photoshop. I mean, all she has to do is say, go ahead and tell your dad. I'll just tell him I had my friend whipped up some photos for a laugh. I mean, really, which is their dad going to believe? That, Clara has a friend who's got a weird hobby and a little too much time on his hands? Or that Clara is a time traveler? I mean, this is just complete and utter bull. Seriously, it is. And, well, from the preview, it looks as if this complete and utter bull is going to be successful. So now we're going to have a bunch of kids running around in a Doctor Who episode. Man, I guess somebody wanted some sort of spiritual last hurrah for Sarah Jane Adventures or something. Well, at least we're going to get the Cybermen next week. So anyway, folks, that's all I've really got to say about this episode. Again, some really nice strong points, fantastic guest stars, and some really cool stuff in general, creepy stuff, nice nods to old Doctor Who, but the whole thing of trying to hang this on our 3 Victorian characters, as it were, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. There's just not enough of them as fleshed out characters to really pull it off, and that's a shame because I do like the characters. Anyway, everybody, that's all I got for you. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe, and of course you can follow me on Twitter at Who's Your Jedi. Until next time, take care and have a good one.